Well, hello everybody. What I need to do with you today is I need to cover with you the method called completing the square used to solve quadratic equations. What it's going to do, it's going to build on what we've done the last 2 or 3 classes. So some things that you still have to be able to do, you still have to break down square roots like square root of 32. You still have to think of that as the square root of 16 times the square root of 2, so 4 radical 2. You still have to be able to do that. You need to also remember, if you got a negative under the radical, there's an I in the answer. So for instance, the square root of negative 25, need to remember that answer is 5I. So you'll need to remember that a little bit. The other things that we did today, as I answered questions over last time's assignment, we did take a homework quiz, so you'll need to get in and get that made up. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a couple of these and review these with you from last time. So this is from last time. You need to remember how to apply this square root property. Now guys, remember the square root property means that the left-hand side is a perfect square trinomial, meaning this square root times that square root doubled is the middle term. Since it's a perfect square trinomial, we can write it as x minus 4 quantity squared equal 25. Now here's where the square root property gets its name. I'm going to square root both sides. Well, on the left-hand side, I'm going to get x minus 4. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to get positive or negative. The square root of 25 is 5. And then remember, I'm going to add 4 to both sides, so I have 4 plus or minus 5. And then we go get our 2 answers. Since this is an integer, this is an integer, we can go simplify those. So 4 plus 5 is one answer is 9. 4 minus 5, the other answer is negative 1. So you got to remember the square root property. I'm going to do number 8 with you, then one more where you have to reduce the radical, because completing the square uses the square root property. So for instance, on number 8, the square root of 4x squared is 2x. The square root of 25 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10, and 10 doubled is 20. So it is a perfect square trinomial. So this is going to become 2x minus 5 squared equals 16. Notice that I have not taken the square root of each side. All I've done is I've rewritten it. Now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I got 2x minus 5 equal positive or negative 4. Now think about what you got to do to get x by itself. The first thing I need to do is add 5 to both sides. The next thing I need to do is divide by 2. So my answers can be found by 5 plus or minus 4 all over 2. Now we'll go get our 2 answers. 5 plus 4 is 9. 9 over 2 is 9 over 2. 5 minus 4 is 1 over 2. So you got to remember how to use the square root property. Now I'm going to pick one of these just to remind you of something, because this is going to show up a lot on the completing the square. So here goes. On my number 13, the square root of x squared is x, square root of 36 is 6. 6 times x doubled is 12. So I'm going to think of this as x plus 6 squared equal 18. I'm going to square root both sides, so I got x plus 6 equal positive or negative square root of 18. But now here's what we got to do. We got to reduce the square root of 18. So I'm going to call that the square root of 9 and the square root of 2. So that this really becomes 3 square root of 2. So I've got x plus 6 equal positive or negative 3 radical 2. To get x by itself, I'm going to subtract 6 over. Now, I'm going to leave my answer like that. You can't combine that whole number out front, that integer, and the radical. So that's your answer. Now, that is what we did last class. You'll need that on today's class. So real fast, on 16, 17, and 18, I need to show you how to figure out the value of C, in case we didn't last class. so that it will become a perfect square trinomial. So the fastest way to do this is to figure out what c is going to be. I'm going to take 1/2 of -10. So I'm going to take -10 divided by 2, and I'm going to get -5. Your next step is you square -5. So -5 squared is 25. The reason you got to be good at this would now become x squared minus 10x plus 25, which is a perfect square trinomial that looks like that. Here comes my number 17. Half of 60 is 30. 30 squared is 900. So this becomes x squared plus 60x plus 900. As a perfect square trinomial, it's x plus 30 squared. Now this number is really important because when we complete the square, we have to do that to both sides. So guys, on your class notes, jump over to number 22. And let me show you how we're going to complete the square. There's just a couple of steps I got to get you used to. If you look at number 2, you do not know the square root of 5. So we are going to get rid of that first. So we're going to rewrite this as x squared minus 4x plus blank equal 5 plus blank. Every time that will be your first step. We're going to move this constant out of our way and we're going to put blanks there. Now, to get the number that goes in the blank, you will take half of this number right here. So -4 over 2 is -2. And then you will square it. -2 times -2 is 4. So we're going to put a 4 in each of those blanks. Just like we did on number 16 and 17 and 18. Now, check out what we've done. This side is a perfect square trinomial. So it becomes x minus 2 squared equal 9. Now we're to the square root property. Let's square root both sides. So I have x minus 2 equal positive or -3. Now, let's get x by itself. So let's add 2 to both sides. So I've got 2 plus or minus 3. Now let's go get our two answers. 2 plus 3 is 5. 2 minus 3 is -1. Okay. So that's how we complete the square. Here goes our number 23. Notice that you do not know the square root of 65. So we got to make the left-hand side a perfect square trinomial. So step number 1, write this as x squared minus 8x plus blank equal 65 plus blank. Notice once again, plus blank, it'll always be plus. Now this is positive 65 because I moved it over the equal sign. Now, you can do this in your head or your calculator. You're going to take half of -8. So -8 divided by -8 divided by 2 is -4. And you're going to square that number. So 16 is going to go right there. Now, this side becomes a perfect square trinomial. So I've got x minus 4 squared equal 65 plus 16 is 81. Now we apply the square root property. So I have x minus 4 equal positive or -9. Let's add 4 to both sides since it's negative. So I got 4 plus or minus 9. Your two answers, 4 plus 9 is 13. 4 minus 9 is -5. Now, so far I've done 2 that comes out nice for you. My number 24 is going to come out nice for you also. So here goes my first step. We're going to write this as x squared minus 4x plus blank equal 12 plus blank. Half of negative 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. So we just completed the square. Now this side becomes x minus 2 squared equal 16. Apply the square root property. So x minus 2 is positive or negative 4. Let's go get our two answers. So I've got 2 plus or minus 4. My two answers, 6 and negative 2. So guys, I've just done 3 with you where the answers come out nice. The right-hand side comes out as a perfect square. Let me show you a couple where that doesn't happen. So, look at your number 25. Now, I've got x squared plus 10x plus 1 equals 0. I know the square root of 1 is 1, but 1 times x doubled is not 10x. So we still have to complete the square. So I've got x squared plus 10x plus blank equal negative 1 plus blank. To get your blank, take half of your b term, which would be 5, and square it and get 25. Now, the left-hand side is a perfect square trinomial. So we're going to write this as x plus 5 squared equal 24. I'm going to apply the square root property. So I've got x plus 5 equal positive or negative square root of 24. Now, 24 is not a perfect square. So let's think of that as the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. So now I have this, x plus 5 equal positive or negative 2 radical 6. Square root of 6 doesn't reduce anymore, so that part's done. Ending answer, to get rid of this positive 5, it's going to be negative 5 plus or minus 2 square root of 6, and then stop. That's your answer. On a positive note, when a radical shows up, you can't combine them. Just reduce it. Here goes my number 26. I'll do 26 with you. I'll skip 27 with you, and I'll jump down to 28. So number 26, we're going to write this as x squared minus 12x plus blank equal 7 plus blank. Think what that blank should be real fast. Half of 12 is 6. 6 squared is 36. The left-hand side becomes x minus 6 squared equal 43. We'll square root both sides, so I got x minus 6 equal positive or negative square root of 43. Now, in this case, 43 does not reduce. 4 doesn't go into there, 9 doesn't, 16, 25. Ending answer, 6 plus or minus square root of 43. So there's what we got so far. Now, I've spoiled you so far. All of your b values so far have been even. And when you take half of an even number, you get a whole number. You get an integer. So we can square that really, really easily. Let me show you what it looks like when it's not. So here goes your 28. So I'll do 28, and then I'll move my recording part here, and I'll do number 30 with you, because both of those have odds. So here's how to handle it, guys, if there's an odd middle term. The steps are the same. I've got x squared plus 3x plus blank equal 7/4 plus blank. Now, to get the blank, I'm going to take half of the b value, and I'm going to call it 3/2. Don't call it 1.5, because now to square it, check out what I'm going to do. 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 9/4 to both sides. Now, when I write this as a perfect square trinomial, I've got x plus the square root of 9 is 3. Previous. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 4 is 2. So I've got x plus 3/2 equal 4. Don't be afraid of the fraction. Equal 7 plus 9 is 16/4. But 16/4 is really 4. To bring it home now, let's square root both sides. I've got x plus 3/2 equal positive or negative 2. X becomes negative 3/2 plus or minus 2. Now, just grab your calculator. To get your two answers, guys, let's go negative 3, fraction key 2, not divided, but fraction key, plus 2 equal. And you're going to get 1/2. And then let's go negative 3, fraction key 2, minus 2. And you'll get negative 7/2. I would also take 0.5 and negative 3.5 because those are nice clean decimals. Okay. Now, my last one I'd like to do with you, let's do another one where it's odd in the middle. You can tell my PowerPoint's wanting to get done. So, once again, here goes my number 30. We're going to think of this as x squared. I'm going to skip number 29. This becomes x squared plus 11x plus blank equal negative 21/4 plus blank. To get your number, take half of 11, but don't think of it as 5.5. Think of it as 11/2. 11 squared is 121. 2 squared is 4. So I'm adding 121/4 to both sides. When we write this as a perfect square trinomial, I've got x plus the square root of 121 is 11. The square root of 4 is 2. So I have x plus 11/2 squared equal negative 21 plus 121 over 4 is simply 25. Let's square root both sides. So I got x plus 11/2 equal positive or negative 5. Looks like x will be negative 11/2 plus and minus 5. Now just use your calculator. Negative 11 fraction key 2 plus 5, and you're going to get negative 1/2 or negative 0.5. And then negative 11/2 minus 5, and you're going to get negative 21/2 or negative 10.5. Now guys, while I'm here, I'm just going to mention one thing. The only difference that we would have done is pretend that this was a negative 25 for just a minute. If this was a negative 25, then this would have been positive or negative 5i. And then my answer, I would have just had negative 11 halves plus or minus 5i. And then that, well, my PowerPoint's being aggressive. That would have been my answer. So guys, your assignment is to finish up last time's worksheet and the one that says Day 12B Extra Class. Good luck.